It's just me again. I want to apologise because I haven't been uploading videos. Like the last time I uploaded a video, I've only got one, mind you, but that was like February. I've had exams and things, and you know, but at least they're over now, so I can concentrate on this, which is what I've wanted to do for a while. And excuse me if I'm a bit dopey or a bit tired or miserable during this video. I've literally had like one of the worst days of my life. So, well, it's 3:10 in the morning now, so yesterday wasn't too great, but I'll get over it. So, and why, one way I'm getting over it is by doing a video. And today I'm going to be discussing gun control. It's like a really big issue at the minute, particularly in America, but actually the debate's on the rise here as well in the UK. I have a lot to say on this issue, and actually this is going to be like a series because I will not fit everything I want to say in one video, and I'm going to break it down. And this video I'm going to be talking about the definition of the Second Amendment, the American Constitution. The reason I'm starting with America is because it's, well, obviously everyone knows the Second Amendment in America is like a really big thing. And basically a lot of people say to me, oh, you shouldn't have an opinion, you're not American. But to be fair, like I said, it's on the rise here as well, and a lot of what happens in Britain actually happens in America and vice versa. So, plus as well, you know, I find it really, really interesting, and I think that America is undergoing like a lot of crap at the minute under the Obama administration, but you will find out what my opinions are on Obama in later videos. But I'm going to get started. The definition of the Second Amendment is a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And a lot of like the gun control advocates say that, well, this is saying that the individuals don't actually have a right to keep and bear arms. It actually just limits it to the state maintaining a militia. But actually it's not true. All you have to do is read it. It says the right of the people to keep and bear arms, and I'm really confused. I don't find that to be rocket science personally, but yeah, like groups like the NRA, and I support the NRA, but I can't understand why they don't refer to the first part. They always talk about, or I've ever heard them, all I've ever heard them talk of is the second part, which is the right to keep and bear arms, but they don't refer to the first part about a well-regulated militia, and this is because they think it weakens their argument, in my opinion. And gun control advocates use this to their advantage. They think it's like detrimental to the NRA's argument, but it's not at all. It's just, all it's doing is recognising the advantages of an armed citizenry to a free state. It's a people's right, like I said, and a people's right is actually referred to a lot in the Constitution. You've got the Declaration of Independence, which, what does it say? Yeah, the people have the right to alter and abolish a destructive government. So, and also in Article 1, in Amendment 1, you've got the people's right to peacefully assemble and petition the government for a redress of grievances. So these are people's rights, but obviously individuals compose the people. So individuals you need action from the individuals to make that right effective. I mean, it just makes sense. That's what they're saying. So when people say individuals can't have, it's not actually saying individuals have the right to bear arms. I don't understand where your argument is, because I mean it quite clearly says that they do. And I've been researching this like a lot, and I came across this site known as, it's like a blog, I don't know who blogs it, I don't know if it's a man or a woman, but it's really, really good, and it's called A Jeffersonian Perspective. So if you look at that, and it's basically kind of like an attempt to look at the Constitution through Jefferson's eyes, if you know what I mean, like how he would interpret it and how he would go about, well, in today's government. And it was talking about like Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3 of the US Constitution. So, sorry, I've got some notes up here because I'm crap with numbers and quotes and things like that. But I've tried to analyse it as best as I can. But it's saying that it forbids states from keeping troops or ships of war in times of peace without the consent of Congress. And if this is true, if this is in the Constitution, then saying that, like, if the Second Amendment was to read that states have the right to maintain a militia, that would actually, if that's all it merely granted, then that would contradict completely what it says in Article 1. So, well, that just rules it out. And even so, you know, Congress could prevent a state from forming a militia, and it could give its consent to a state to keep troops and ships in times of war, in times of peace, sorry. But the fact that keeping and bearing arms are a people's right means that they can't actually infringe upon these rights anyway, even through a militia. So their liberties are protected, and you can't infringe upon that. Or at least you should be able to, but Obama seems to be doing well. The US doesn't have a citizen militia anymore, and a lot of people say, well, if they haven't got a citizen militia, then the right to keep and bear arms are irrelevant. But actually, initially, the militia was the first line of defence against foreign invasion, and it was drawn from the people. So private militias were never contemplated by the founding fathers, and there's serious doubt that they would want a militia against a government that they had established, because, I mean, I'm 90% sure, like, from a Jeffersonian perspective, Jefferson would have thought, well, if there's a directly elected, well, if there's electoral control over a government, then there's no need to have any, like, legal enforcement against them through a militia, like, set up against the government, if you know what I mean, if they were to go like that. There's also no evidence for, well, popular backing of these private militias. You know, I mean, they don't actually work against violated rights. They're self-constituted, and they're actually quite destructive against the rights of the individuals in America. The power that America has to change their elected officials through non-violent means is still prevalent. Like, dissatisfaction has been shown through rises in third parties before, so the system does work. There's no actual call for a violent overthrow of a government, do you know what I mean? So a private militia set up against the government is not actually required. So actually it's them that are irrelevant, not the gun rights of the individuals. And just because they don't have, like I said, just because they don't have citizen militias anymore, it doesn't mean that the Second Amendment is now irrelevant. The Second Amendment meant that free people have the right and should retain the power of self-defence. So the militia was literally just a means of making that defence effective. So if the militia ceases to exist, the right for the people to defend themselves doesn't cease to exist. A free state relies on its people to protect it when necessary and defend it, and at all times keep it free. So that's what a free state is. A despotic state would have a standing army to maintain security, and such an army could be used against its own people. We've seen that happen in history. A standing army has oppressed its own people, and that was one reason why the Founding Fathers were against it. That's why they wanted a citizen militia. And to remain free, it was necessary that the people had a right to possess arms, so that they could form their own militia when they had to. And a despotic state would fear a free state. Basically, the free state has unarmed people, so they'll rise against a rebellion, and a despotic state would fear that. But a free state encourages armed people for its own protection, and in Jefferson's time that did mean a militia. So the basic purpose of the Second Amendment was literally that the people were not to be left defenceless, and the government, if they were to disarm them, that could lead to an abuse of government power, and therefore they could quite easily oppress their own people, because the people wouldn't have any means to correct the situation. Now, the right to self-defence is actually really interesting, because a lot of people rightly say, well, there's nothing intrinsic about the right to own a gun. Like, there's no intrinsic value of a gun. You're not born with the right to possess one. And no one's arguing that. Like, no one on the gun ownership side of the pro-Second Amendment side of the argument is arguing that. What they're arguing is that people have a right to liberty, and everyone has the right to liberty. That's a natural right. But the means of enforcing that liberty is an auxiliary right, which is the right to own a gun. So, I mean, that's basically what it is. So you've still got the right to self-defence. So the right to self-defence is therefore needed to secure your right to liberty. And that's just the way it is. That's how you deal with it. For example, how do I say? How can I use this? If you've got like a cat and a dog, right? The dog is chasing the cat. You wouldn't argue that the cat doesn't have a right to use its claws to defend itself and scratch the dog's eyes out if need be, to protect itself from being ripped apart, right? It's the same thing. If people have a right, they don't have the right to the claws. They have a right to defend themselves. It is a natural right to have liberty, and this is the way it means of enforcing it. And another way of showing that as well is a lot of people, and me included, think that the Second Amendment is there to protect the First. I don't think the First Amendment would be there today if it wasn't for the Second Amendment. I think it goes without saying. I think the Second Amendment is perhaps the most important amendment, because it kind of enforces the other rights, because the rights aren't absolute. They need enforcement, and I feel that the Second Amendment does that. But, saying that, there's nothing wrong with limitations to an extent. Well, the Constitution doesn't rule out certain limitations, you know what I mean? Like, all ordinary citizens should have the right to own a gun for legitimate purposes. But there's nothing to say that gun ownership could be denied for someone who has previously been convicted of a crime, someone who's mentally ill, someone, even someone who's not properly not familiar with the proper use of firearms. There's nothing wrong with intelligently regulating gun ownership, but when it gets to the point where regulation is essentially the same as a ban, as a disarmament, I mean, you've got a problem. I mean, the right to concealed carry is actually not a constitutional right, because it's not actually fulfilling the people's right. It's quite difficult to explain. Like, you've got to enforce the people's right. It's not so much because it's not actually an individual right, even though each individual does need to own one to enforce the people's right. You've got to own that gun to serve the people's right. Do you see what I mean? Not to serve so much your own right. I'm probably not explaining this in the best way, but I mean, I support the right to concealed carry, but at the same time, I can see why others don't. But yeah, sorry if I wasn't particularly clear on this video, but I wanted to make something, and this has been like rattling my brain for like so long, because I've been debating gun control on social media literally about a gazillion times, like, and it's like driving me insane. And I thought I would start off with the definition as best as I can to kind of combat those arguments that actually somehow the Second Amendment doesn't require individuals to possess arms. It does, and it quite clearly does. So yeah, sorry liberals, but okay, well I'm gonna get on with uploading this and editing this and etc. It's like 3:45 in the morning. Right, well, this should be up tomorrow, later on. I shall say good night, and thanks for watching. Please like, please share, please comment and subscribe. I would really, really appreciate it. Okay, goodbye. See you in the next video.